Hey there everybody, here's part 2 of that video I just posted. So I'm going to finish up talking about sources, and then we'll start talking about formatting reports, and then we'll be done for this week as far as the videos go. I just finished up talking about primary and secondary sources and how they're the first step in creating a report is finding your information, and you're only as good as that information. So the second part of that is primary data, and that's like using questionnaires, research, surveys, things like that. So when collecting data, you obviously want it to be anonymous, and you want it to be fair, but one drawback of this is it's sometimes hard to get people to participate in whatever survey or questionnaire you're trying to give, and to take it seriously. So you kind of got to be careful even with primary data when you're trending your results. And there are some tips in the notes. Don't ask leading questions. Only use necessary questions, use neutral language, try to pilot your survey, things like that. And so I won't dwell on that because it might not apply to most of you. You might not need it. But if you do, there is a section somewhere around page 290 or 300 that dedicates some time to talking about surveys. And so if you need to use one for one of your reports, feel free to visit that or email me for questions. So once you get your data, whether it's primary or secondary, you have to figure out how you're going to display it. And I guess the only rule of thumb for this is that you have to make it accessible to your reader or viewer. There's no way for me to tell you that your report should be text-based or use tables or graphs. It has to be discretionary on your part. And you have to ask yourself, what is the best way to take the information I have and to digest it and make it manageable for the people who want to see it? What's the best way for them to view it? Is it to read a bunch of text? Is it to look at a bar graph, a pie chart, a table? And it really depends on the information and the goal of the information. And so there's no way for me to teach you that. It's just got to be something that you try out. And maybe when we talked about revisioning, maybe you try it as a bar graph and it looks weird, and you try it as another form of display and it works much better. So just be as fully transparent as possible. Use explanatory notes, visual aids, graphics, videos. Use whatever you have at your disposal to make your information as clear to your reader or viewer as you possibly can. So there's some stuff in the notes about the types of visual aids, graphs and tables, charts, photographs, videos, and obviously you know what all of those things are. But there is a checklist in the textbook for figuring out which one you should use and if you've done it correctly, and that's on page 308. It talks about line charts, bar charts, pie charts, photographs, all that good stuff. So step 1 is to find great data and great source material. Step 2 is to display it in a manageable and efficient way. Step 3 is really to plan some sort of action. You have to interpret your data in the way that you need to interpret it to get people to do what it is you want them to do. So even though you use a visual aid or you use a bar graph or a pie chart, it's important in your presentation, and both visually and verbally, to explain what that data means for your project. So if you're pitching a new product line for your company, you can't just show what it'll cost to make it and who's going to buy it and so on. You have to interpret the data to actually get people to get on board with supporting you or producing or whatever it is. So interpret the data for them. Don't expect that they're going to see the data in your report and go, oh yeah, I get it too. Say, here's the data, this is what it means. So make a clear and distinct connection between the data you found, the source material you found, and the research question that you were originally asked or told to deal with or that you created for yourself. So you might not need to include every piece of data you mined or researched, but you want to include the parts that are the most meaningful for your audience. So when I talk about evaluation, I talk about trending your data. What does your data predict for the future? Are there any outliers that you want to talk about that you can't explain? Did you find anything unexpected? And does it raise more questions than it does answers? So sometimes you come back in your report, the answer in your report is, I don't have an answer, or my report found that there's no real clear-cut answer, and that's okay, but your data has to support even that. So like I said, try to make it clear and equitable, or clear and efficient. So chapter 10, moving forward, is mostly about organizing the report, and we talked about formatting and stuff like that, but one format's not necessarily better than the other, whether it's more text-based or more visual. Or I prefer blended with even some multimedia and video clips, just to keep people interested. And like I said, that's discretionary on your part. I can't teach that. It's personal preference. It's the audience and how well you know them and what they're expecting. But there are some examples of both text-based reports and more visual multimedia reports. Figure 3 on page 330 and Figure 1 on page 327 are both examples of text-based reports. But there are several ways that you can organize your report apart from the media or the medium which you're using, and those are listed in the notes. And those are time, location, importance, criteria, and problem solution. So time is pretty simple. You organize your report in terms of chronology. This would be like more of a history project or something where you're talking about something from beginning to end, maybe the genesis of a product, where it came from, where it is now. You do things chronologically. The other is location. That's by geographical location. So maybe your company has 5 branches, and you have to do something in your report with all 5. You could do that locationally or geographically. Importance means you just discuss your most important topic first. I don't know when exactly you would use that. You could do it topically if you have lots of different topics to discuss. The last one is the most important one for you and for me, and that's problem solution or cause effect or idea solution, whatever you want to call it. But here's the thing that we're talking about. I did this research. Here's my idea. This is what I want you to do with it. Here's the problem. Here's the solution. And so that's how most reports are set up. Introduce the problem or the idea or the discrepancy, and then show how you and your data can solve it. And so usually a report will be problem, findings, data, and then of course the solution or the recommendation, and that can sometimes be tricky. Depending on your audience, you might want to present your recommendation first and then justify why, but that's only if they're expecting that. So think about this as just like an essay. You want to plan ahead for whatever it is you're going to do. You want to outline it. You want to create headings and subheadings. Make sure everything is well organized. Major sections, minor sections, and think of these almost as like your headings of your PowerPoint slides or whatever. However you're going to organize it. You need to categorize things. Large chunks of information are usually bad, and it makes things harder to remember psychologically. So you want to break things into chunks. Use headings and subheadings. Make your printout or your handout, whatever it is, easy to follow through headings, even your visual presentation. And there are tips for organizing headings, making sure they're parallel, making sure they're not too long or too short, and then that's all in the notes as well. But the major parts of your report are your introduction, your findings, your summary, your conclusion, your recommendation, just like I stated. And those are also outlined in the notes. You can read more about those. But like I said, I'm not going to dwell on any of those because it'll be different for every report, and every different project will be organized in a different way. Like I said, that's kind of up to you. But you can see how a lot of what we've done with our written work is going to translate into the report writing. It's just going to include more data, more charts, but the organization, the thought process is pretty much the same. And then the last section of the notes is on supplementary sections, title pages, cover notes, abstracts, table of contents, and those may or may not become a part of what you're doing. So just kind of review those at your own leisure and for your reference. Things I would consider this week, like I said, look through that HATS presentation, look through the technical writing presentation, brush up on your APA manuscript stuff and your formatting. It's in the Troika textbook. I posted some reference links to the APA page at OWL. That's usually where I go with any questions. I mean, nobody memorizes that stuff. So feel free to look through all this stuff this week, and hopefully when writing assignment 3 does go up in the week 5 folder, you can look through it and see how these types of things correspond with one another. The notes with the application, and if you have any questions on how to get started with this report or where to go, rewatch the videos, send me an email, give me a phone call, whatever you guys need. But like I said, read the notes, make sure you get through all the PowerPoints before looking at assignment 3, and hopefully you can see how those things correspond. So have a good week, lots of stuff to do this week, and I'll see you online.